In Kashmiri Shivaism, there is a famous sentence uttered by Shiva. In Sanskrit is Aikoham Bahu Syam. That means I am one, I like to become many. So this is maybe resumes many things that I'd like to say now. Reality has countless differences. If you just look your experience now, how many colors, how many sounds, how many thoughts, how many feelings, all different. No one is really repeatable as exactly the same. So, countless differences, but no actual separation. It's not necessary to go to mystics to understand this. Science is saying continuously that the universe is one huge process. This process can be known by our limited mind just studying some aspects, some limited processes that nevertheless are not separable from this huge process. Teilhard de Chardin once said that the only true atom is the universe. You know, atom comes from Greek atemno, that means you cannot divide it. And the closest word to atom is individual. Individual, that can't be divided without losing its integrity. So, this universe is full of differences, but no real separation. We usually have experience. Our experience is how reality appears, really. No, not a single aspect of reality can appear apart from our experience. You can't hear a sound, you can't see a color, you can't know a thought if it's not already in experience. And this whole, in order to be known, must be cut into pieces by our mind through concepts, through language, through words. For example, maybe Thich Nhat Hanh once compared a rose with the garbage and was saying they are just two opposite things, you know. The rose is enchanted, unlike garbage. The rose is well-colored, unlike the garbage. Nevertheless, in 15 days, the rose will be garbage. And 15 days before, the rose was a thorny branch. So, thorny branch, rose, garbage are just concepts, words that we apply in different times to just one nameless process, without beginning, without end. In fact, if you try to find where is the borderline, where the rose ends and the garbage begins in those 15 days, you can't find it, because that line is only in our mind. The problem with words and concepts are useful for our life. We can every name. Names doesn't tell us what something is. Tell us how we can use it. A pen is for writing, a door is for passing through, and so on. So, words have a problem in comparison with our experience and reality, that are fixed, are like photos. You can do 100 photos of a river, but you can't get the movement of the current of the river, of course. We have only fixed things. And when you fix rose, of course, there is the problem of when the rose will become garbage. But that line is only between two concepts. And so we, especially in this time, in this period of our history, we live more and more in concepts and words, and less in actual experience of what is this aliveness. And this has some consequences when we begin to think also of us as things. Our identity, we misunderstand our identity as a fixed thing that doesn't change. And, sometimes I like this image. If you just think of our physical body, we are more like eddies of a river. Eddies of the river. There is an eddy here that is bigger than an eddy over there, and maybe the eddy over there is more foamy than this one. So we think they are all separate things, all separate individuals. But it's enough just to say, oh, I like this eddy, and with a bucket, you keep the eddy, and you have a bucket of stagnant water. Because the eddy is not separable from the overall current of the river. It's not even a part of that current. Because the current of the river is just one, it has no parts. The best way to describe an eddy is that the eddy is how the current of the river appears in that point of space and time. We are like that. And if we look closely to our experience, we see that this non-dual being, because there is no separation indeed, that doesn't mean that it's just one. Many differences, remember, many differences, no separation. So this non-dual being appears in experience as two inseparable, I stress the word, in two inseparable aspects that seem very different, nearly opposite, that we can call consciousness or awareness and the contents of consciousness. The contents of consciousness appear to in and as consciousness. They are all the experiences that come and go. The sounds of the birds, my words, your thoughts, your bodily feelings. Every experience that arises and passes away continuously are these contents of consciousness. And consciousness is, first of all, what we could say an aware presence. An aware presence means that there is an evidence that is doubtless. Whenever you ask, do I exist? The answer is yes, not because you have to think about it. Because before thinking, you must already exist. So My existence is prior to any thought, is a doubtless evidence. And existence means also being aware. It's a doubtless evidence that is not an object that we know. Because when we know everything, we already are and are aware in order to know. So every action we can do in order to see, to know, to do anything has already on the background the undeniable, doubtless fact that we are and we are aware. And this, so when we say that this aware presence is evident, it's not because it is an object that we can know, because it is always on the side of the knowing one. But its evidence is, as to speak, self-shining, or in more abstract words, untransitional. It's something that shows itself like light that doesn't need to be illuminated because it shines by itself. Another feature of consciousness that is very important for me is what usually is described as the first-person outlook. First-person outlook means that when we are aware of everything, it appears to me. There is a direct intimacy. It's not in third person, as, for example, the descriptions of reality made by science. Science describes reality objectively. That means as objects. And an object is described in third person. This, that, and so on. If a friend comes to me and says, I have been abroad and I saw that and that, all his description is in third person for me, because I can't see what he saw. I just hear his words. But his words, his description is presenting itself to me in first person. That is direct intimacy with what is happening. And as we will see later on, to say that awareness is a first-person outlook and stresses in this way, I want to emphasize the intimacy, the directness, not that is an ego action, an action by the ego. We will see better later on. And so we have this first-person outlook, and experience just present themselves and continuously change. These experiences that I perceive in the first person can be bodily sensations, for example, physical sensations, can be thoughts, memories, ideas, images, they can be perceptions, sounds, sights, and so on. And when appears a description in third person of that appears in consciousness, all bodily sensations are described as body. All thoughts are described as mind. All perceptions, sensory perceptions, are described as the world. But the mind, the body, the world are descriptions in third person. They don't present directly to us, apart as words they present, as concept. But if you look for your mind, you don't find your mind, you find your thoughts. If you look for your body, you don't find body, you find bodily sensations, in the direct perception of it. When you look for the word, you don't find the word. You find colors, sounds, and so on. Those are what I, in my first person outlook, contact. Those are what my experience is made of. Body, mind, the world are concepts. As such, they present directly to me, but only as concepts, as names. So, the contents of consciousness, I must finish at 12, okay? 5 minutes, okay. All the contents of consciousness arise and pass away continuously. It's a continuous flux of these contents. My aware presence is the aware space where they arise and pass away, so it doesn't change. The perceiving consciousness couldn't perceive change if it's not steady, It's impossible to perceive change if there is not a background that is still. This means that the contents of consciousness appear in time, they change, but they can be perceived as changing only by a timeless consciousness. And so, just looking at our direct experience, we also can say with Shiva, I am one, but I like to become many. In the next meeting, we will go deeper in the problem of identity and identification. Thank you.